Cathy Engelbert's leadership was supposed to guide the WNBA through its biggest era of growth, but now it's collapsing under her own decisions. It started with one denial too many. Engelbert's claim that she never dismissed player concerns or misrepresented talks with athletes like Nafisa Keir. Keir's response, a blunt public rebuke, shattered that narrative, and Caitlin Clark's silent endorsement of Keir's words turned the criticism into a movement. The moment Clark stood beside Keir, the league's power balance shifted. Players no longer whispered frustrations, they amplified them. What had been an internal dispute erupted into a full-blown crisis, one threatening to overshadow the league's progress and its credibility. Engelbert's authority, once unquestioned, is now the subject of lawsuits, outrage, and a growing revolt from within.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
As Clark confirms Engelbert's lawsuit against her, the situation captures more than personal conflict. It's the defining moment of a league at war with itself. This story reveals how one act of quiet resistance from Caitlin Clark exposed the WNBA's deepest flaws. Leadership out of touch, stars forced into silence, and a system cracking under the weight of its own contradictions. The league's future now hangs on a single question. Who truly leads women's basketball? The commissioner or the players who built it? Caitlin Clark confirms she's being sued by WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. And with that, the league's quiet internal tension just exploded into a full-scale public meltdown. What started as a simmering conflict has now turned into the most dramatic, divisive, and potentially damaging moment in recent WNBA history. And somehow, the player who was supposed to lead the league into its next era of success is now at the center of a lawsuit filed by the very person meant to protect that future. It didn't start with a lawsuit. It started with disrespect, quiet, persistent, and all too familiar. Caitlin Clark was already the face of the WNBA. She drew record-breaking crowds. She brought in massive new sponsorships. But on the court, she was being hit hard, routinely fouled, targeted. And not in the defensive intensity kind of way, more like the why is no one doing anything about this kind of way. And for a while, Clark stayed quiet. That was her thing. Don't get political. Don't stir the pot. Just play. But that silence? It broke. Because while Clark was getting knocked around on the court, things were also falling apart behind the scenes. Commissioner Cathy Engelbert was already under fire. Her leadership had come into question after player complaints started surfacing. Not from anonymous sources, but from league veterans. One name stood out. Nafisa Keir, a respected player and vice president of the WNBA. Keir accused Engelbert of misrepresenting a conversation they had. She claimed Engelbert was distorting the truth, pretending the league was in sync with its players when in fact, concerns about safety, treatment, and respect were being ignored. Keir didn't just criticize behind closed doors, she went public. That public statement sparked a storm. Keir's comments hit hard, and Engelbert's response didn't help. Instead of acknowledging player frustration, she denied the claims and tried to shut the conversation down. But it was too late. The media picked it up, fans started connecting dots, and other players began backing Keir, including Caitlin Clark. Clark's decision to support Keir wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. A few liked tweets, a quiet endorsement. Just enough to make it clear. She stood with the players, not the commissioner. And that changed everything. Because Clark isn't just another athlete. Her opinion shapes headlines. When she speaks, or even when she doesn't speak, people notice. Her subtle protest wasn't subtle to the people watching. It was a clear signal that the league's golden girl wasn't going to play along anymore. Then came a lawsuit. In a move that stunned both fans and analysts, Engelbert filed legal action against Clark. Sources say it's centered around reputational damage. That Clark's alignment with Keir's statements painted Engelbert as dishonest and that she'd cross a line. But the optics? They couldn't be worse. The commissioner of the WNBA suing its biggest star during a time of record growth and media attention? That's not just a PR issue. That's a leadership implosion in real time. And the backlash was immediate. The public response wasn't confusion, it was disbelief. Why would the league turn on its own star? Why escalate something that could have been handled with a conversation? The answer points to a deeper issue: control. Clark wasn't just stepping out of line in the eyes of league leadership. She was challenging a system that expects silence. Her support of Keir wasn't just solidarity. It was a threat to the status quo. A reminder that players, especially ones with massive platforms, can't be managed the way they used to be. Engelbert's credibility, already shaky, began to collapse. Her handling of the internal disputes, her flat denials, her inability to calm rising tensions, none of it worked. Press conferences fell flat. Trust eroded, and as Clark stayed quiet, her power only grew. That's what made the lawsuit feel like a panic move. Because legally, Engelbert's case is weak. But symbolically, it's an attempt to put players back in their place. But that time is over. This generation of WNBA athletes isn't afraid to speak up. And Clark's support for Keir, subtle as it was, cracked open a door that isn't closing anytime soon. And it's not just players paying attention. Fans, media, and even NBA figures have started weighing in. The WNBA's internal issues are no longer internal. They're center stage. And the longer Engelbert resists accountability, the more people start asking the obvious question: how much longer can she lead? Because make no mistake, this isn't just about one lawsuit. It's about leadership accountability, about player safety, about whether a league built on empowerment can actually listen to the people it claims to represent. Clark's frustration didn't come out of nowhere. The rough play, the lack of response, the constant downplaying of concerns, it all added up. And when Keir had the courage to call it out, Clark's decision to stand with her was more than personal. It was political. It was transformative. And now, it's war. The league is entering collective bargaining negotiations soon. A new CBA is on the horizon. Tensions were already high. But now, the atmosphere is combustible. A lockout is very much on the table. Players are organizing. Trust is at an all-time low. And the idea that leadership could threaten or punish stars for speaking out, that's a recipe for disaster. Sponsorships are at stake. The momentum the league has built could evaporate. The entire structure of women's professional basketball is in jeopardy, not because of bad players or bad fans or bad business, but because of bad leadership. And unless the WNBA course corrects soon, it could collapse under the weight of its own silence. Caitlin Clark's evolution from a non-political athlete to a quiet but powerful dissenter has become symbolic of something much larger. A shift, a moment, a reckoning. She didn't sign up to be the face of a movement, but she is one now. And Engelbert, she's on the ropes. If the WNBA wants to preserve what it's built, the solution isn't legal threats or public spin. It's listening. It's transparency. It's treating players like the adults and the assets they are. The league has a choice to make: back the lawsuit and watch the fracture grow, or admit the mistakes, rebuild trust, and move forward before it's too late. Because the players aren't waiting anymore. Caitlin Clark isn't waiting. And the fans? They're wide awake now. Drop a comment. Do you think this lawsuit ends Engelbert's run as commissioner? Should Clark continue speaking out? And where does the league go from here? Hit that subscribe button. We'll be here to unpack every twist, every breakdown, and every boardroom blunder as it unfolds. Because this isn't just drama. It's a battle for the future of the league. If you had told anyone 6 months ago that Caitlin Clark would be at the center of the biggest leadership crisis in WNBA history, most people wouldn't have believed you. She was the chosen one, the rookie sensation, the player the league paraded as its next chapter. But now, that same player is being sued by the commissioner. Yes, sued. This isn't some clickbait rumor or tabloid spin. Caitlin Clark has confirmed that Cathy Engelbert, the very woman responsible for overseeing the league's stability and growth, is taking legal action against her. And that's not just a headline. That's a warning shot, one that exposes just how deep the fractures inside the WNBA have become. And to be clear, this isn't just about Caitlin Clark anymore. This is about who really has power in the league, who gets to call out injustice, who gets to hold leadership accountable without fear of retribution. And right now, That balance is out of control. The story didn't start with lawyers. It started with disrespect. Clark was enduring rough play week after week. Body checks that looked less like competitive defense and more like targeted aggression. But when fans and analysts called it out, the league, silent. No statements. No warnings. No sense that anyone in charge cared enough to do something about it. And for a while, Clark kept it quiet. She didn't rant in post-game interviews. She didn't call out refs. She stayed professional, focused, careful. But behind the scenes, a much bigger fight was already boiling over. Nafessa Keir, longtime player and vice president of the WNBPA, decided enough was enough. She called out Engelbert directly, accusing the commissioner of lying about conversations they'd had. According to Keir, Engelbert had misrepresented their discussions to make it seem like the players were on board with how the league was being run. They weren't. Keir made it clear that players were frustrated, tired of being ignored, exhausted from raising the same issues, safety, treatment, league priorities, without any real change. And she didn't just float this in private. She went public. That's when things cracked open. Keir's comments hit like a lightning bolt, and it didn't take long for media outlets, fans, and players to weigh in. Everyone started asking the same thing. What is really going on at the top of the WNBA? And then came the real shock. Caitlin Clark backed Keir. Clark didn't give a fiery press conference or tweet a manifesto. She didn't need to. She simply liked a few tweets criticizing Engelbert's leadership. Subtle, but deliberate. And in a media landscape that dissects every move from high-profile athletes, that gesture said more than any statement ever could. It said, I see what's happening, and I don't support it. And coming from Clark, that was everything. Because here's the truth. Clark has power. Not just talent. Not just fame. She is the reason the WNBA is breaking records. Her presence has brought in new fans, new money, new attention. If anyone could afford to play it safe, it was her. But instead, she took a side. And almost immediately, the league retaliated. Cathy Engelbert, already facing a credibility crisis, decided to escalate. Sources close to the situation confirmed that a lawsuit was filed against Clark, citing reputational harm. Essentially, that Clark's support of Keir's version of events damaged Engelbert's image. But if Engelbert thought that move would control the narrative, she miscalculated. Badly. Because the lawsuit wasn't interpreted as protection, it was seen as punishment. A commissioner suing her own league star player? At a time when the WNBA is trying to promote unity, growth, and empowerment? The irony is staggering. The reaction was swift. Fans were furious. Other players rallied around Clark and Keir. And sports media? They tore into the league's leadership, questioning how things got this far and why Engelbert still had the job. And that brings us to where we are now, a league in freefall. Because this isn't just a PR disaster. It's a warning sign. The WNBA is in the middle of a crucial growth phase. Viewership is up. Sponsorships are flowing in. Corporate interest is at an all-time high. But all of that momentum can disappear if the foundation isn't solid. And right now, that foundation, trust between players and leadership, is crumbling. What happens when a most high-profile player in the league doesn't trust the commissioner? What happens when players can't voice their concerns without facing legal retaliation? You get what we're watching now, a league eating itself on the inside. And it could not come at a worse time. In just a few months, the WNBPA and league officials are supposed to begin negotiations on the next collective bargaining agreement. The 2026 season hangs in the balance. And the potential for a lockout? It's no longer hypothetical, because now players have a reason to dig in. They've seen what happens when they speak out. They've seen what happens when they rally around each other. And they've seen that not even Caitlin Clark, someone who brings in millions of dollars in value, can escape the wrath of a league trying to silence dissent. So why play nice? Why cooperate with a commissioner who sues players instead of listening to them? Why pretend everything is fine when the entire country just watched the league turn against its biggest asset? The sad truth is, it didn't have to be this way. Clark wasn't calling for Engelbert to step down. She wasn't demanding special treatment. She wasn't trying to lead a rebellion. She just wanted to support a fellow player, someone raising legitimate concerns about leadership. But that act of solidarity, that was too much. Because in Engelbert's WNBA, loyalty to leadership seems to matter more than loyalty to teammates. And that's a losing strategy. This moment could have been a turning point for the league, a chance to reset, a chance to show that leadership was capable of evolving, that they were willing to listen. Instead, it's turned into a full-blown crisis. Sponsors are watching. Media outlets are tearing into the league. Players are emboldened, and not in the rah-rah unity kind of way. They're angry, they're tired, and they're ready to fight for a league that doesn't punish them for speaking up. If the WNBA doesn't do something, now they risk losing everything they've built. And Caitlin Clark? She doesn't need to speak another word. Her actions said it all. She supported her peers. She stayed composed. She let the league embarrass itself. And that's why this story matters. Because this isn't about drama for drama's sake. It's about power, about who controls the narrative, about whether this league, built on empowerment, actually practices what it preaches. The players are watching. The fans are watching. The media's watching. And unless major changes happen at the top, this story doesn't end with a lawsuit. It ends with a lockout. So now we ask, where does the WNBA go from here? Does Engelbert back down? Does the lawsuit get dropped? Do the players demand new leadership before the next CBA? Or do we watch this league, one with more momentum than ever before, unravel because its leadership couldn't handle a little honesty? The moment Caitlin Clark confirmed she was being sued by WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert, the conversation around women's basketball changed. Completely. This wasn't just drama anymore. It wasn't player beef or another league squabble tucked away in post-game interviews. This was war, and it sent shockwaves through the sports world. Because when your league's commissioner files legal action against your star player, the message isn't just loud. It's deafening. And let's be clear, no one's confused about what this is. It's not about some legal technicality or protecting the commissioner's good name. It's about power, control, and intimidation. Clark didn't go rogue. She didn't attack anyone. She didn't hold a press conference with accusations. All she did was support a fellow player, Nafessa Keir, who had the audacity to speak the truth about leadership missteps. That's it. That's the crime. Public solidarity. And Engelbert's response? Sue her. You don't do that unless you're trying to send a message to every player in the league. Toe the line, or you're next. But here's where Engelbert underestimated what she was dealing with. This isn't just any player. This is Caitlin Clark, the player who's single-handedly brought in millions in new revenue. The one fans travel hours to see. The one people who've never watched a WNBA game now recognize instantly. The one whose jersey outsells everyone else's. The one the entire league needs to thrive. You don't sue Caitlin Clark. Not unless you're ready to blow up the league from the inside out. And that's exactly what's happening. The lawsuit has become a symbol. One that represents everything players have been whispering about for years. The disconnect. The dismissiveness. The culture of leadership knows best while players are sidelined, figuratively and literally. This wasn't just Engelbert's line in the sand. It was the final straw. Because the truth is, this tension has been building. Keir's public comments didn't come out of nowhere. They came after months, years, of feeling ignored, misrepresented, and minimized. When Keir said Engelbert was twisting conversations and misrepresenting the union's concerns, it opened the floodgates. Suddenly, players weren't afraid to question the commissioner. Suddenly, the league couldn't hide behind corporate messaging and pre-written talking points. And then Clark chimed in, except she didn't even say anything. She just liked a few tweets, endorsed Keir's message, chose a side. That's all it took to bring the whole house down. Because Caitlin Clark choosing not to stay silent was louder than any interview. It was a turning point, not just for her, but for the entire league. And Engelbert's response, to go nuclear with a lawsuit, only confirmed what players have been saying all along. That instead of listening, this leadership punishes. That instead of growing with its players, it shuts them down. How do you expect players to feel safe in a league where the most powerful woman in the building is suing the most popular one on the court? How do you expect any of them to trust the system now? You don't. And that's the real crisis. Because this isn't just about Caitlin Clark. She's the face of it, yes. But she's not alone. Keir made the first move. Other players followed. And now there's a growing sense that the athletes are done asking for permission. They want transparency. They want honesty. They want respect. And right now, they're not getting it. The WNBA finds itself at a breaking point. One that could define its next decade. Maybe even determine if it has a next decade. Because this scandal isn't happening in a vacuum. It's unfolding at the worst possible time. Right before collective bargaining negotiations. Right before the union and league leadership sit down to hammer out a new deal that will shape player contracts, benefits, safety protocols, and more. This isn't just a bad look, it's a labor nightmare. Players aren't coming to that table trusting the league. They're coming angry, suspicious, organized. And now, with even Clark in the middle of the fight, they have leverage they've never had before. If Engelbert thought the lawsuit would scare players into silence, she's already failed. It's doing the exact opposite. More and more athletes are speaking up. Fans are rallying behind the players. And the media? They're done playing nice. No one's buying the spin. Everyone sees the power play for what it is. And the more Engelbert tries to tighten control, the more out of control the situation gets. What's even more frustrating is how avoidable all of this was. The players didn't demand the moon. They weren't asking for golden contracts or executive control. They asked to be heard. Keir asked for honesty. Clark asked for accountability. And instead of meeting those asks, Engelbert chose war. She chose lawsuits over leadership, power over partnership. And now, she's facing a full-blown rebellion. Because this isn't just about how the league handles conflict. It's about what kind of league the WNBA wants to be. Does it want to be a brand built on empowerment, authenticity, and athlete-first values? Or does it want to be just another broken institution that punishes dissent and protects egos? It has to choose. Fast. Because the players have already made their choice. Clark's move, supporting Keir, sent a ripple effect through the entire organization. And now, that ripple's turned into a wave. The old way of doing things won't work anymore. The players aren't just showing up, they're taking charge. They're setting the tone. They're shaping the future. And they're demanding a league that actually matches the values it sells to sponsors and fans. This isn't a PR issue. It's a cultural reckoning. And unless the WNBA really listens, it risks losing everything. Sponsors are watching this unfold. Broadcast partners are watching. Fans are watching. Everyone who thought the league was on the rise is now holding their breath. Because one wrong move could take all that progress and send it crashing to the ground. And Cathy Engelbert? She's running out of moves. If she doubles down, she'll lose the locker room for good. If she backs off now, it'll be a public admission that the lawsuit was retaliatory. Either way, her credibility is cooked. And Clark? She's fine. Better than fine. She didn't have to scream or tweet or showboat. She let the league destroy its own image. She held her ground. And in doing so, she's become something the WNBA never saw coming. A player who's bigger than the commissioner. So now the question isn't whether Clark will recover from this. It's whether the league can. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should Cathy Engelbert resign? Should the WNBA issue a public apology to Clark and Keir? And what does player empowerment really look like in 2025? Subscribe for more real talk on the meltdowns, shaking up sports, entertainment, and everything in between. Because when the players take control, the rules start changing, and the fallout is